Hello and welcome to the Ski Racing Podcast with me, Ed Drake. Tord Nilsson and I are back to discuss the epic races from Kitzbuhel for the men and from Crans-Montana for the ladies. Tord, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, Ed. What a great weekend. Lots of skiing. So let's not dilly-dally, eh? Let's get straight down to it. Let's head first over to Kitzbuhel. I mean, everybody's favourite race, right? It's just amazing. No crowds. I've been, and you have been in the 55,000 person crowd before. Drinking Gusser beer, and it's an incredible experience. This time we had to hear quite random electronic crowd noises.
That, piped in crowd noise.
It really did my head in. The cowbell, the 3 cowbells in every single racer was somewhat unimaginative. But nonetheless, we'll crack on and we'll do this in chronological order. So we're going to start with the first downhill. Because this year Kitzbuhel hosted 2 downhill races, and it was a crazy race, 3 hours long. We only had 30 racers. Ed, give us a really brief outline of what happened.
I'm gonna struggle to be brief here, I think, Tord. It was a really difficult race day. There were some major crashes. We saw Ryan Cochrane-Siegel smash into the A-net on traverse. He came round the corner, landed just at that first gate on the top of the traverse, landed, and then sort of his edges hooked up and basically sort of fired him at 90-degree angle to the A-net. He was very, very lucky to get away with. He's got a small fracture of a bone in his neck, which sounds worse than it actually is. He was in the finish area for the second downhill anyway, so that was quite good in terms of a lucky escape, shall we say. Then as Kriechmayr had a massive crash off the Zielsprung, off the last jump. We've seen careers ended on that jump plenty of times before. We've seen Scott McCartney crashing off there. We've seen Daniel Albrecht crash off there. And for me, it was too big. It was too fast going into there, and it was a risk that really didn't need to be taken. A lot of the racers thought similarly. We had, I think it was Johan Claret talked about it before the race after training runs, saying how dangerous he thought it was, and it turned out that those fears were warranted as we saw a massive crash. They then actually changed the jump, so we missed a day because of bad weather on the Saturday and pushed the program back to the Sunday for the second downhill, where they shaved the jump, and we've got a little bit of footage for that for you in 1 second. But and then then the wind came in and they had to chop the races off at bib number 30. They needed 30 races to get through to the push out the start gate to have it be a race that would count towards the overall standings and to make the race valid, essentially. But for me, that didn't really sit very well because the wind was really high for the last, from bib about 23 to 24, I think it was, where the wind was really, really heavy. And what that meant was Feuz were pushing races out of the start gate to make sure that they got through to the 30. They got the magic number of 30, and then they pulled the race because it was too dangerous. For me, I feel like if it was too dangerous for bib 30, in all likelihood it would have been too dangerous for bib 29 and bib 30 and even earlier. So I feel a bit disappointed is the wrong word, but I don't think they made great calls this weekend. The racing itself was fantastic, but we've analysed the differences in that final jump versus the first downhill run and the second downhill run. So here's how they changed it. So here are both runs from Beat Feuz. So the run on the left is the Friday downhill and the run on the right is the altered second downhill. So I've started them at around the same place, as accurate as I can be, so you can see the speeds coming in are pretty similar. But we're going to have a quick look at the trajectory. So they changed the takeoff point, they moved it back, which a shame it took a huge crash from Kriechmayr for them actually to do that, because obviously the racers still had issues with it in training and they were voicing those opinions by all accounts as well. So here is the jump. So the takeoff point on the left hand side is slightly further on down the hill than the right, so that was one of the things they changed. But just take a look at the trajectory, okay? So what what you can see on the right-hand side, the altered position is that the racer is a lot lower. The angle of the skis are pointing a bit more down, so there's less likelihood that the wind is going to catch. Just as we play this on, keep an eye out how high they go. So the right-hand side very rarely, doesn't really get higher. That's not a great one to draw. This one, it doesn't really get too high. On this hand side, it's almost double the distance. I mean, I know these are rudimentary on-screen drawings, but if you take a look at the background, if you look at the B-nets in the background, he's on the right-hand side, he's very slightly above the B-net just there, and on the left-hand side, he's pretty much double the height off the ground on the left-hand side. And what that does is just allows, when you're travelling that fast, 145 kilometres an hour, that's obviously very, very quick, and the chances of being affected in midair are obviously higher the higher you go off the ground. So you can see there, it's a huge difference in height off the ground, and Feuz, who's one of the most competent jumpers and happiest in the air, makes it look easy still. But you can see it's not necessarily about the length, although obviously on the right hand side the length is shorter than the unaltered left hand side, but it's more about just the height difference and how much distance from the ground Feuz is in that first one. So they made a great change. It's just a shame that it happened after one of the biggest injuries we've seen so far this season.
That's really interesting how they've changed that, Ed, and really well highlighted by you to see. I mean, it was a huge jump. I mean, gigantic.
Yes.
And it's good that they did take the necessary precautions afterwards, albeit after we did see some accidents, of course.
So as Kriechmayr has, I've got it here, he's got a concussion, he fractured his collarbone, he's done his ACL and his MCL. So they did do the right thing in changing the jump. They just did it too late, and a bit of a tough one nonetheless.
Yeah, so let's move on to happier times with the podium. On the first race, where we had Dominic Parry, who came third, 0.56 behind. I mean, he's a real, I want to call him an old hand at this. He won the year I went to Kitzbuhel. He's a fantastically powerful, brilliant skier.
He's brilliant down there. He's fearless. We've said it many times before about Dominic Parry with his skiing. He has had a slower return to World Cup in terms of the performances have taken a while to get back towards the sharp end. Yes, he managed to get a bit of a kickstart last time out, and then to back it up with a podium here in Kitzbuhel was epic, was really good. Great to see him back.
And then Austria with Matthias Meyer coming in second, only 0.16 behind the eventual winner, an absolute king of Kitzbuhel, Beat Feuz. Meyer, he was close.
Yeah, really close. I always like to see a home winner for some of these races because normally because the crowd goes mental and the atmosphere itself goes a bit crazy, but the pipe noise didn't. Maybe they had a different bit of pipe noise ready for in case it was an Austrian winner, but Matthias Meyer is becoming super consistent. He's been there from the get-go of the season, picking up results left, right and centre. So another top quality performance and only 0.16 back off Beat Feuz.
Yeah, who, as you very rightly said, Beat Feuz taking his first downhill of the weekend. So funny enough, I've got a fact here of it took him 11 starts to earn his first downhill victory in Kitzbuhel. That's a lot of downhill starts on a horrendously scary piste.
Yeah, but if you think about who those were against, the likes of Didier Couche, name just one, you can kind of understand why it took him a little while to get to the sharp end in terms of picking up podium performances. But Feuz, again, another person that hasn't found his feet early on in the season, but it sure looks like he's found them now.
Yeah, I mean, he might have been beaten in the last 10, but he definitely made up for it this weekend, because we'll now talk about the second downhill, which he also took home, and that was actually his 50th World Cup podium. He came in front of, again, Matthias Meyer, coming in at third, 0.38 behind, so super consistent to, again, get on the podium in a tough race.
Yeah, it was really good. Again, Maya, just backing up what we said earlier, very consistent and put down another quality performance. When you're talking about, 4/10 or less on the second day, 0.16 on the first day, we're talking minute differences. One turn not done quite as well as the other guy, and those are the margins you're looking at. But another big points haul for Matthias Meyer.
Yeah, totally. And then in second place, it's a 40-year-old. I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it? First 40-year-old to get a podium on the Streif in Kitzbuhel. I mean, you've still got a bit of legs in you, Ed. You should be there, mate. Johan Clary. Johan Clary, absolutely brilliant.
I think my body might say otherwise, but Johan Clary managing to pick up a podium. The oldest podium, I believe, in World Cup. He was fourth on the first day, backed it up with a second. He was only 0.17 off, and Beat Feuz only picked that up in the final split pretty much. I think Feuz was, we'll have a little look in a second, but I think he was about 0.3 back midway down, or was it slightly more, midway down that second race run. And Johan Clary must have thought, Beat Feuz is good, but I didn't exactly ski bad down here. But Feuz absolutely put the hammer down when he got to basically from the Red Bull jump down across Traverse and then along that in run into the Ziel Sprung, and he was epic.
Yeah, and do you know what? It just shows that a race like Kitzbühel, you've got to have experience. All of these guys are... they're old hands. They're old timers. They've been around the block. They know what to expect because Kitzbühel is a damn scary place to go. Yeah,
I mean, we've said it before, but downhill, the courses very rarely change. They make small adjustments. We saw it from day one to day two, the Friday to the Sunday, that they made some slight alterations leading into the Red Bull jump because they wanted to slow the athletes down before they got to Traverse. So they make minute adjustments, or maybe a metre in terms of the gate positioning, but all in all, it's the same when you ski there from one year to the next. So Feuz is 11 years or whatever he's been coming. It would be pretty much the same. So you're doing 2 or 3 at least runs every weekend. So all of a sudden you're looking at 30 plus runs. You've got guys starting their first World Cups there. I mean, if you're starting your first World Cup there, you're doing well. But very early on in their World Cup career, to come to Kitzbühel to try and mix it with the experienced hands, and I think that showed with the podiums we got both days pretty much.
Yeah, so what you're saying is it was an easy win for Beat Feuz.
Yeah, I think it was cruising. Yeah, easy peasy.
There you go. Let's see how easy peasy it was when we sit down and analyse it right now.
Here's Beat Feuz doing the double in Kitzbühel. So this is the second day. This is straight after he had a course hold. Very, very impressive being able to come out and do the business again after the course hold. So as you all well know, this race piece, there is absolutely no rest at the start, and it's straight into the thick of the action with a lovely big jump off the Mausefala, 44 metres, and he comes around here so smooth in that right-footed bumpy turn, even when the outside ski, watch it there, bouncing around, doesn't have an effect. He doesn't panic, comes in and chucks the skis across the hill as a way to try and control some of the speed around this 180 degree change in direction. So just working really hard, drift, and then he's got round the gate and he's starting to press the ski nice and clean. You can see it just there bending up underneath him here. So it's gone from being a long, stiff, straight downhill ski, engages the pressure, and it bites, and it goes exactly where he wants, straight into the tuck. He's so hungry for it. So you've got Johan Clary leading in the finish area, and Beat Feuz comes into what is probably the toughest turn of the whole race track here. A little bit of a drift in. The side hill here is immense, and it's dragging you this way, all the way around here, trying to pull you into the net. So all important that you try and fight as hard as you possibly can to make sure that you don't give in and you don't allow yourself to be dragged out and down up, unless you end up wanting to do a Bodie Miller and ski up the fences there. But Feuz lets it run out really nice and cleanly, gets straight into that tuck position, and is absolutely flying across the flats here. Brilliant smooth skiing from the Swiss number one, getting ready to pick up that double. And he finds himself, though, with work to do, which is not something you necessarily think you're going to have to do with Feuz. Feuz is one of the softest skiers on the flats, somebody that you normally say would absolutely nail them. But he didn't quite get it right, whether it was a waxing problem or whether he just wasn't able to get those skis swimming across the surface of the snow enough. But he left himself, lost half a second in that split, and finds himself with 0.3 of a second to try and find over the old man on tour, Johan Claret. So coming in through this section here, all about keeping low aerodynamically, getting a good press through this section. What a picture that is. It's a brilliant camera angle shot. Feuz, talked about it already, one of the best in the air. So compact, gets that chest down all the way, extends the legs, but that disadvantage grows, comes around here nice and solid over that outside ski. Yes, gets compressed here, pitched out, but then all about nailing that pressure. You can see that he's got separation through that upper and lower body. That outside ski is really gripping up hard. You can see from this angle here, he's still got good shin angulation there. Getting all of that pressure through the front of the boot really allows you to get that upper body helping out with getting all the pressure you need on this injected race piece. So Feuz still solidly over that outside ski, manages to carry all this speed, gets nice and high, and again another smooth early transition onto that outside edge through the long turns leading up into this section. So he's found 400ths. That's not enough, but this was really where he went to town on the bottom here. Good setup as we come in towards the Red Bull jump, just bellies this turn, so he gets tight on the gate, brings the turn, so from tight out back to tight again. That's what you call a belly on a banana gate. So he's bellied out the turn there, brings it all the way out, so he snaps it back at that gate. So he's allowing this direction to come underneath the gate so that he's able to not drag low in the line. And he was so smooth, he just times it to perfection, clears that gate out the way, a little bit twisted as the upper body starts to counter rotate, but just uses that ability to feel what's happening under his feet to pick that up before it turned into an issue. And he rolls over onto this Red Bull jump nice and smooth, doesn't want to be pressurising the skis on takeoff, comfortable in the air, allows that sort of slight drift from right to left as that draws him away from where he wants to go. But this is a really nicely set up turn, just brings the power, brings the pace, realises that you can see that he just takes a little bit off the pressure here. Again, pressing, releases the pressure slightly as the ski gets light on that takeoff. And then the minute his skis get that contact, you can see him engage in that edge just there. That's the difference. You can really see it here. No engagement, separation there. And that outside ski bites and starts to stop that pull towards those massive iconic A-nets on the traverse. Gets into this, and all you're doing across here is just waiting till you can get above the rise line for this final turn before you just drop down into this final pitch. He's pulling time back every single meter. He's pulling hundredths of a second back. He's carrying the top speed through the bottom half of the race piece. Good solid jump in the air, and that is Beat Feuz. Not often you get to pick up a double at Kitzbuhel, and that's exactly what he's done.
Okay, we move on to today's race, again in Kitzbuhel, and this time it was the Super G, and it was cold and cloudy and crisp, all the seas basically, but it was really, really tough, icy. It was like our friend Finley Mickle on Eurosport said, it was a real rattle and rolling was the way he described it.
I mean, you could say that, yeah. But it was in stark contrast to the opening race of the weekend or the Friday, where it was about 4 or 5 degrees on the run and actually meant that it was quite soft. So back to normal service for World Cup ski racing. It was bulletproof icy, and we saw a mega race. It was brilliant to see, very close, and it was not a race necessarily for the tech skiers. We saw Alexis Pinturault finishing in 12th, Loic Meillard picking up 9th. So those guys looking for the overall managed to pick up some decent points, but I think we've been hoping for a couple more.
Yeah, and we also had like some good kind of high bib numbers coming in as well from Canada, especially. But I mean, it looked really, really tough on the legs, and I mean, I'm guessing you know what it's like. Explain how to take those turns when you're just kind of bouncing around. And what's really great is the super slow-mo nowadays, as they have in Eurosport. I was feeling the pain.
Yeah, I mean, I raced that back in 2010, I think it was, when I raced, and it's a really fun Super G. It really is. It's brilliant. It's you get to do the traverse. You get to do some of the iconic bits. You get to miss out on that crazy stuff at the top. But it was brilliant today, and the guys were fighting all the way to the end. You still get that sort of burn coming across traverse, and then you have to try and control your speed down through that finishing straight before the Zielsprung. So it works you hard all the way to the finish. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you've got to get your line right, and we saw a lot of guys not necessarily crashing out, just getting the line wrong and going either through a gate or the wrong side of a gate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the podium. Once again, shock horror, Matthias Meyer, third place. 3 podiums in one weekend in Kitzbuhel. That's a pretty decent weekend, I'd say.
Yeah, pretty decent in terms of hardware he's taken home, and pretty decent for the amount of zeros he's just added to his bank account. So I'm pretty sure he will be feeling very good about the weekend.
And he was 0.55 behind the eventual winner of Kriechmayr, but then you had in between that Marco Odermatt, who came in 0.12, which that's pretty tight.
Yeah, he skied really well. He was my pick for the Super G victory today. He has been building solid performances. He's won a World Cup Super G before, but he's not somebody that's always at the sharp end, but he's very tactically aware. He's got great fearless skiing behind him, and he was very, very close to picking up the win. I was extremely excited to see another name at the top of the tree. So he is going to be looking to pick up some big points in the chase for the overall as well.
Yeah, and in the winner's enclosure, so to speak, was Vincent Kriechmayer, who came in first victory and third podium of the year. So he started a really decent season, but nice for him to cap kind of the season with a podium. With a win. Yeah,
he's another person that's similar to Feuz, that's been a bit slower to the start of his season. He hasn't picked up a World Cup win already. He picked up multiple wins. He nearly took the Super G Globe the last couple of seasons. He's been always there or thereabouts in the downhill as well. So, coming good just before World Champs. And it says a lot that the Austrian, nice to get an Austrian winner in Austria. And that will bode him well for the rest of the season. He took it very much in his stride. He was pretty calm about it in his interviews afterwards as well. So good to see.
That's awesome to see. So let's have a look how he did it.
Here is Vincent Kriechmayer's winning run from the Super G from today, depending on when you get to watch this. And so good to see him back on the top of the step of the podium. It's been a while since he's been there, but he's struggled so far for early season form, but he's found it now. This is the first major turn on this Super G run. You could just see how hard he is fighting to try and get some grip. He's not got an awful lot of separation, but that's why the ski is bouncing across the top of this rock hard injected race piece. Look at the inside hand down, trying to find some grip, and that's when the power starts to come on. Look at that, bouncing through those ruts, but all importantly, nice and clean in the air, because he's released the pressure slightly. So all the pressure's coming on here, and then you just see the spray slightly come off as he's looking to try to release the ski so that when he hits the air, it's not under a weighted outside ski. Very much a Super G that should favour the downhill skier, very fast and open, a little bit unsure of his direction here. He took slightly more than he thought, pushed it towards the back, but no stress from the Austrian as he then just rolls over onto that outside ski once he's landed back into that tight position straight away. Long outside big press on these long Super G skis, that manages to stay nice and high through here, because it's all about making sure that you come nice and smooth through here, so it gives you the space after here to set up and then carry speed across the flat section. You can see here, nice and low through that tuck position, releases the ski, comes back at this blue gate, gives himself some space on this left footer, because this, if you go late here, it's very flat after this section down here, very, very flat indeed. So he's looking to try and make sure he's got enough of the work done above the turn. You can still see the injected race piece after 2 downhills down here. There are some ruts and bumps on the Honeycomb track, but look at this, just beautiful shot here as he comes round, judges this to perfection, releases the turn, nips inside that gate, and then he's back into a super, super low tuck position. Again, nice and low through here. Couple of breather turns before coming around here. So we saw a few athletes that got caught, in the rutted and bumpy conditions. So this is the sort of speed controlling turns coming up here. Nice and solid over that right foot, trying to get a lot done before he came in here, because you can't even see where this blue gate is up here. It's up there somewhere. And so what he's gone to do here is make sure that he's getting turn done above the gate, so that he's not all the way down here and has to ski up again. He's just coming round here, snaps it off and manages to stay high through here, just manages to keep this, so this uphill section after the gate doesn't happen. So nice and smooth through there. Let's clear that off, and then rolls the edge through here. I think an early bib number was key today, because it did start to cut up under some of the high pressure turns into the Red Bull jump now. Nice and set up again, looking to not have a super hard edge pressure as he comes off here. Nice compression move, gets open, extended out again a little bit, but he's got his direction. You can see that here. He's going to land in the right spot, and then it's about getting up and out into here to be able to ski smooth and clean onto the traverse. A little bit of a sideways move just to control the speed ever so slightly here. Tactical decision from Kriechmayr. Comes round here, gets the belly of the turn done, loads of pressure, loads of it. Using all his strength, you can see that foot underneath him biting. What a position that is. That is core strength to the max. Lots of pressure through that outside leg. That upper body nice and separated, even when the hill is dragging you this way. He's separated, that ski is arcing, and he's aiming to get nice and high up against that gate, so that when he gets over the brow of this hit, this little this rise point here, that the direction's done before everything starts to try and drag you towards those massive A-nets on the outside. So over this next section, gets light, back on the edge straight away, but manages to sneak inside there without having to ski too much uphill. It's just a small feather onto that left foot before another solid move over that right foot, and then it's diving down into the finish. Nice and smooth, great pictures here. Look at that separation, eyes on the prize down there, and over that outside ski. High speeds coming through these final few turns, and this was where he made up his time on Odermatt. You can see 100th back here, snip and tuck, but he's such a great glider, something that Odermatt I'm sure we'll find at some point, but he didn't have it today. Kriechmayr, lovely and controlled through the air of the Super G skis, gets straight back in that tuck, and Vincent Kriechmayr picks up his first win of the World Cup season.
We move over to Crans-Montana for the women's downhill and Super G. It was again 2 downhills that we were looking at there and 1 Super G. And Ed, what did you make of it? And how? I mean, we're going to come on to yet another kind of 2 races where we had 1 winner with Sofia Goggia. But in general, what did you make of it?
I thought it was brilliant. It was that piece always challenging. It's got loads of different stuff going on. There's steeps, jumps, flats, big turns, and it was really good. The weather affected the first day after the heavy snowfall, which meant they lowered the start. So the first race was a bit of a sprint downhill start at the same point as the Super G, which was on Sunday. But all in all, I thought it was really good. And it was, again, another race where the ladies have to really, really fight to sort of stay in control of what's happening, because the piste is a proper one.
Yeah, and so let's move swiftly on to the podium, where we had yet again Breezy Johnson storming into 3rd place. Stop
She's
it!
got plenty
I did do that.
Storming. Oh God, I missed it. Okay, carry on, keep going.
Yeah, no, she did storm into third place, but she had a really good race, and she's becoming pretty consistent, albeit not winning races consistently, but definitely in top 5, top 3.
Yeah, another podium. So she's picked up, third place of the season, and becoming super consistent, which is what you've got to do. You've got to have that consistent base to be able to take the risk, because obviously the difference between winning and coming second or third is often, a couple of tenths, and it was third was less than 6 tenths back. So that's a very small difference that you have to make in terms of 40 odd downhill turns, skiing very fast. A couple of more risky entries into a section, a couple of slight line alterations, a bit more of a risky line take, but you can only really do that when you've got the confidence and the stability on the base to be backed up by good performances. So I expect to see her starting to feel more stable in terms of where her natural skiing is towards the podium, and she can now start to really strive for victories.
Yeah, she has got the wind in her hair. So I'll stop now. In second place, we had Czech Republic's very own Esther Ledecker, and what's interesting is that she took those slightly more riskier lines and took a little bit more risk, which for her did pay off.
Yeah, so she skied exceptionally well in that first race, 0.2 off the eventual winner. She's becoming, again, another racer, becoming really consistent. For her, she's having to switch from snowboard to skiing, standing sideways to standing, facing the direction that you want to go in. And she's becoming more and more at home, and she's certainly one of the first names you look to, probably the second or third person you're looking at when you look at that start list after the eventual winner of Sofia Goggia.
Yeah, Sofia Goggia, that was the beginning of her weekend, which just was immense. She just owned the mountain, didn't she?
We've said that time and time again when it comes to Sofia Goggia. She is all or bust. She's only one gear, and again, that's another sporting cliche, but she fits that cliche perfectly. She has zero regard to actually finishing a race. She's going at 100% regardless of what's going on, conditions under her feet, course set, whatever it is. She is all out, full attack, and she is so loose and on the edge, and it paid off for her, and she is now picked up so many points already this season that Downhill Globe is almost certainly already hers.
No question about it, really. You'd happily put a bet on her. Until Ben starts predicting her and it all goes horribly wrong for her.
Actually, he did pick her for one of them, so maybe he's tried to break that duck, who knows.
Let's then swiftly, what you're going to do is you're going to analyse the second downhill, so let's quickly talk about that, which was the day after. We had Elena Catoni in third, 0.6 behind the eventual winner. But what did you make of her run?
She's not somebody that we tend to see towards the sharp end that often, and I'm trying not to be disrespectful because she's obviously a very talented skier, but we don't see her on the podium very often. But it all went right for her. She skied very well through the tricky section. She carried a lot of speed off the back of the ice wall, and she made no mistakes on a couple of those blind rolls that we saw ladies lose quite a lot of time over. So she will be looking to try and boost that into the rest of the season. They've got a hectic schedule coming up as well as world champs. So the Italian team are riding high, and it's another Italian name that we're seeing starting to push the best in the world.
Yeah, and in second we had Lara Gutbarami, who in the first downhill finished 16th, so she must have been really disappointed and kind of, I guess, wanted to come out and show everyone what she's got. Yeah,
because last season she picked up the double victory, if memory serves me correctly, so she and Crans-Montana is pretty much almost certainly hers in terms of a race event that you think, a little bit like Dominic Paris and Val Gardena or Beat Feuz and Wengen. So somewhere where you go to that event, that venue, and you think that person is going to do well, and she really made amends. She, again, another racer that really does put it all on the line. The first race didn't go quite well for her, but the second race only 0.27 off, and she did push Goggia pretty much all the way. So I think a solid second position for Lara Gutbarami.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying there, because it's almost like a football team playing at home with their home fans, and they know the grass. It's the same thing. She knows the mountain. It becomes a real advantage. Sofia Goggia taking her fourth straight victory in downhill, and I read this quote, which I just thought was brilliant, which was, mentally I went into today like yesterday's win was only a training run. I mean, that's a hell of a way of going about it, isn't it?
I think sometimes, I mean, I certainly do it when I get a camera in my face. I sometimes just put words out there and hope that they make some sort of sense. I mean, you do what you got to do. She backed it up with another win, so maybe that's how she does. Maybe that's what she's got to do to make sure that she brings her A game each and every time. But she certainly did. I mean, she wasn't relaxed. She wasn't resting on her laurels. It wasn't like she won the first day so she could just cruise and win the second day. So maybe that's what she meant by it. The race was back to the start. It was the downhill start, so it was much longer. I think it's an extra 30 seconds pretty much, or 25 seconds in length. So that's what she needs to say to herself to make sure she stays in the right zone for a quality performance. Then you got to do what you got to do. Good stuff though.
Yeah, and I think having that mentality is really key to be able to tackle a downhill race, because you've got to kind of wipe everything out from the day before.
It's one run counts, right? It's one run counts. So
yeah. I mean, incredible. Let's have a look how she did it.
And here is Sofia Goggia's second win of the series at this point. So this is the second downhill, the one from the top. So she picked up the victory in the previous day in the downhill, which was from the lowered start, but this one right from the top. There's a lot more speed. The light's a bit flatter, but you can see, as ever with Goggia, she is right on the edge. You can see that working really hard all of the time with her whole body to try and stay in balance. But she skis under the feet very, very loosely. Slight line alteration as she comes into here. You can see that from the snow that's just picking up. She didn't think she had quite enough direction, so she chucked them sideways slightly, and to control that speed slightly into here. But then all the way inside, you can see the outside skis off the deck, and then here comes that outside hand towards the ground to give her that separation, to allow that ski to bite up underneath her. Only momentarily as the weight comes back to the inside. But that's what I mean. You can just see that she's quite easy to read in terms of what she's doing and how hard she's working. Just watch, keep an eye on that outside hand, that outside shoulder. It comes up, down. That's the separation move that's getting the skis coming the way she wants. Then she comes towards the inside, loses the outside ski pressure, and that's when it comes back down again and she starts to really drive. It gets caught out slightly by that bump as that outside leg gets pulled away, but then the skis are already thankfully in the direction that she wants them, so that didn't actually materialise into a major mistake. Again, you can see that slightly inside towards the back as she's working to come round through this outside turn to give herself the space over this little roll so that she's pointing where she wants to. All important that she gets the turn done nice and high, gets close to the nets, brings it back, releases the pressure on that ski. You can see that flatten off slightly. Just keep an eye on the skis as they're very much edged up there, and then just as she's coming towards the lip, you can see them roll off slightly. There you go. That's a flatter ski than she had before, so that when she does take off, it's a very smooth takeoff. There's no pressure working sideways against her, and she just manages to get those legs extended out underneath her and rolls up. Yep, it's again a classic Sofia Goggia start to the turn. It's a little crazy, but just keep an eye on that outside ski. That left foot drives up and just bends up underneath her, so it doesn't track sideways across the snow, which means that all of that speed from up here is carried through this section here, because everything that she's got off the back side, the bottom part of this, she's transferred down to where she is now, and obviously will do further on down the hill. But what she doesn't want to do, the minute she starts to chuck them sideways across here, that's then slowing down, so that and the speed that she gets out when she gets to here is not as she wants to be. So you can see that she now gets back in exactly where she wants to be. Nice, smooth. You can see that clean roll on the skis are biting hard underneath her. She gets out of balance, but it doesn't have an effect on the feet. You can see here, nice and smooth over the front. You can see that chest working to try and keep those ski tips engaged as the feet bounce around underneath her. The core strength keeps her in the position that she wants to be before she comes into this. Sets up nicely, stays low in that tuck through until the last possible moment, gets good roll, good move, good press over the front of that breakaway so that she keeps the ski engaged. Again, look at that, nice and separated. She gets countered by some of these ruts and bumps. But then the strength and the confidence just to bring that around out of position here, brings that outside shoulder around so she's square to direction of travel, allows that ski to engage and allows that momentum to be taken down the hill. Again, another clean roll up, straight back in that tuck after the jump. And carries a load of speed now down towards this final section, just building all the time. Quickest through the speed gun. That was all off the back of that rollover, breakover that she engaged the tips right at the start of the turn from. This was where we saw Ledeska get hit off into the nets in the first race. But Goggia has more of the turn done above the gate so that when she gets to here, a little bit light, allows the speed to run out so she's not fighting too hard against the nets, but she's got direction done before she came over that breakover and allows herself to set up for a long left footer, which then builds all the speed into the finish. Again, another solid right left footer, clean over these final rolls, and thankfully in the downhill she doesn't make this mistake she does in the Super G and miss the final gate. So Sofia Goggia picks up another win in downhill. Dominant performance from the Italian.
We stay in Crans-Montana for the women's Super G, which was a cracker. And what did you make of that one, Ed?
It was a pretty rapid Super G. It was set by one of the Italians, certainly with Sofia Goggia in mind and the likes of Brignoni, but it was all pretty much straight down the hill. There were only a couple of turns. One of the turns was midway down, which we'll look at, and I'll talk about it in the analysis section, but there was a big jump where you had to make sure your inspection was on point and you had to be used to being in the air, which is why it probably favoured more of the downhill skiers than the giant slalom side of Super G.
Yeah, interesting you say that because Brignoni was actually over a second behind. She came in third, but she was over a second behind the eventual winner, which is pretty interesting. That was a second Super G top three finish of the season. So she's starting to find her feet, but I mean, that's a big gap.
Yeah, considering that last year she was picking up race wins for fun, she's not been able to find that form as yet. Maybe it's because everybody's looking for her this year. Last year, she sort of entered the season under the radar a little bit without being disrespectful. She wasn't somebody that you looked at and said that she's probably going to win the overall or win multiple races. Schifrins and Suiters and Vlahovas and those guys were probably more the people that they looked at last season, and maybe that was just the sort of the recipe for her to bring out her best performances, and now everyone's looking at her going, she's one to watch in all disciplines, and she's not quite there yet. She's certainly not lost any of that ability. She's just yet to try and tap into it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, the Italians are looking good for the world champs. That's one thing I'd say for sure.
Home world champs as well, yeah.
Sorry?
Home world champs as well.
Yeah, totally. Tamara Tippler coming in, she only just got under the 1 second, so a 0.93 behind. But it was good to see her back on the podium. I think she had a couple of races out of the podium. Memory serves me right.
Yeah, another podium performance with the Austrian team struggling a little bit more. Siebenhofer seems somewhere else at the moment. She's not really able to pick up great performances at the moment. Puchner, I can't remember what her first name is. Her brother used to race together with me, and he is now the camera guy for the Men's World Cup Tour by Miriam Puchner. There we go. Knew it would come in the end.
That was a great backstory, though.
Yeah, filler, like it. Hey, see, words. Just said it. And so what I'm trying to get to is that Tippler is becoming the person we look to for World Cup speed performances for the Austrian team. Although, interestingly, Sofia Goggia actually finished, I think it was about 0.3 off, but she managed to miss the last gate, and so she would have been second. But you have to make all the gates to make the podium, so A little bit of a lucky one, maybe, for those guys?
As the saying goes. The win went to Lara Gutbarami, who, I mean, as you could tell from our chat, was miles ahead. I mean, she was in a different class and really shone, didn't she, Ed?
Her inspection was on point. There were quite a few blind gates. We talked about this gate in the jump that we'll look at in a second. Her inspection was, like I say, on point. She didn't make any mistakes over any of the blind rollers. She rolled up into some big long turns where you needed to carry as much speed out across onto the flats as you possibly could. And she really owned every single turn on the racetrack, and thoroughly deserved her win.
Yeah, and if that's definitely a lesson for any up and coming racers, is inspection is definitely worth getting up for. Okay, let's have a look at how she smashed it.
Lara Gut in a hugely dominant performance in Crans-Montana. It's fast becoming one of her pistes where she's so dominant all of the time. And the confidence that she has right now, certainly in Super G and certainly on this hill, just means that she is a force to be reckoned with. Great commitment through this turn before you come into this ice wall here. Low transition, just a bit nervous about her direction, but works out all okay. You can see the minute she gets sight of that blue gate, straight back in the tuck position, and then stays nice and high. Very little feathering, and I think that's the difference between Lara Gut when she's really quick and picking up podiums to when she struggles for speed. Is that feather that we're so used to seeing from her becomes a too important part of her skiing. And you can see here the confidence that she's got here. It rolls up nice and smooth. There's a slight drift at the very start of that turn, but not really. And she just powers her way down, straight back in the tuck, lovely and clean and smooth. Just look at those feet working independently after. Another lovely setup. Allows the skis to be pointing away and then drills them back in nice and smooth through that power on the left foot. Good absorption movement, and again straight back in the tuck. Very, very confident. This was the turn that caught so many racers out. Lara Gutbarami comes up, rounds that, gets a bit of an extension onto the outside ski. Not the prep she would have wanted going in there, but she manages to pick her point on the horizon, whatever it was that she was looking at, to make sure that she got the direction here right. It certainly worked. Not the right prep, but the right outcome, that's for sure. She comes up into this roll. You can see the flattening of the ski move, so she doesn't take off on an edge here at all. So she gets the direction done. You can see edge, 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 edge. And then the minute she comes into view, flat skis so that ski isn't rebounding against her. She takes off calm as you like in midair. Big flight from a number of the ladies today. And great absorption on landing, straight back into a nice clean outside foot turn, and she carries a load of speed onto this flat section, stays nice and low and compact in the tuck, one of the smallest tucks on tour, and so smooth across here. Just builds the pressure early in the turn with some smooth clean roll onto the outside skis that keeps even on the edge, which is incredibly difficult to do. Just that shoulder position is so low, and she's able to just keep that chest out of the wind. Skis working beautifully underneath her, and just hugs that tuck position in nice and low. Lovely roll on, even transition, builds the pressure on that new outside ski. Very little snow coming off. Brings that hip up in transition towards this final section. So this was the turn again that caught some racers out, certainly caught them out in the downhill. But she doesn't even break tuck. She's so confident in her course inspection, stays in that tuck position, stays really, really low, comes through this dappled light, gives herself the space into this long left footer. Key is to not move off the outside ski, not to get impatient with it, stick with that pressure all the way to the end, and it's really nice and clean. Quick switch again as the fall away comes, but she really delivered a masterclass in confidence skiing from top to bottom. Early transitions again, nice and smooth, and she just absolutely bossed this. Pinpoint accurate on every single piece of tricky terrain, and Lara Gutbarami smashes the field in Super G.
That is all that we've got time for this time. Don't forget to check out the skiracingpodcast.com for the Predictions League, for the podcast, and to link back to this. Ed, where are we heading off to next, mate?
So next is the women are in Garmisch. They race downhill and Super G, which is the 30th and 31st, which is Saturday and Sunday, whilst the men are in Chamonix for double slalom. Don't forget, depending on when you're watching this, if you are watching it straight away, Tuesday, which is tomorrow, is Kronplatz for the GS for the women, and the men have got the night slalom from Schladming. So don't miss those if you're watching this in time. But until next time, goodbye for now.